And we are live. Man, that came on fast, hot and fast. What's going on YouTube and Facebook Live? It is your man, Coach Wroe, and
Coach Taralyn Michelle.
we are here with another edition of Taralyn Michelle and Billy Wroe Live. Stay tuned. We got a great show for you. Welcome to another Tuesday edition of Taralyn, Michelle, and Billy Wroe Live. I've actually been looking forward to today's show just because I needed something different in my life this week, other than what I've been dealing with. So anyway, we are here. It's Tuesday. You should know what that means. It's time to get down with the get down. How you been, sis?
We are both here, man. Because so we're repeating last week, which we want to get out of the realm of doing, because usually we're talking every day all the time. But last week things are all over the place. Clearly, for both of us, we did not get the opportunity to speak. This week is the same thing. I just had to. It's been one. Right. It's been good, but it's been compounded. I'll say that.
True, but it's good that we have a standing conversation on Tuesdays, because that's the obligation right now. So I am happy. Maybe that's what I'm so happy about. I'm happy about the topic, but I'm also happy to be able to engage with you and vibe with you for a solid hour.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. But for those who are just joining in, I am Coach Wroe. This is Coach. I almost called you Coach Wroe as well, Coach Taralyn Michelle. Tonight's topic that we are going to be discussing is filling the gap. Oh my gosh. I always like to start with what we mean by the topics. So I think last time you went first. So I'm going to kind of go first on what I feel like this means to me.
Okay.
The gap is this space that I feel like we all encounter in life at one point or another. It's like the plateau. It's the lull in the journey. And for me, when I started thinking about this particular topic on filling in the gap or filling the gap, I really started thinking about the things that we do in that space when life kind of is just bland or mundane. And so really about being intentional about it's almost like if I was building a house, I think about how I would intentionally lay out the wood that I would be using to make the frame. And that has to be done on a flat surface. And so when I apply the filling the gap, for me, filling the gap, I apply it to me intentionally laying out my tools while I'm in that flat space and that boring space of my journey, laying out those tools and laying out those supplies. So that way, when it comes time to elevate or erect, I'm already organized and can just go straight into the next movement, into the next level, into the next opportunity, or whatever it may be in my life. Go towards that efficiently, as efficiently as possible. So when I'm thinking about the filling the gap, that's what I think about, is what we do with all that extra time. No such thing as extra time, but what we do with all that extra time that we have, and how sometimes what we will do is we'll sabotage that time in order to kind of not get our hopes up, because we don't want to be disappointed when it's time to go to the next level, and we might jump up and miss the ledge, or we might get up there and slip back down a level. So we'll kind of self-sabotage ourselves and say, I don't want to get too excited because I don't want to jinx it. Nah, I'm going to jinx everything. I don't care at this point. How about you?
Wow, so much to unpack. Well, I would just add to everything that you said, because I feel the same way about that. I think for me, the one thing that comes to mind, several things that come to mind with that gap is not only complacency, but the feelings of anxiety, uncertainty, lack of control. Sometimes those things can make it where within that gap, instead of that being preparation mode for you saying, okay, I know that this gap is something that, first of all, it ebbs and flows. We've
Yes.
all had many gaps before, so it's not like this is new. So instead of the preparation standpoint, which is what you were referring to, then some people, instead of being in preparation, will start to question themselves and that space of, it could be silence. Sometimes it could be stillness. Sometimes it could be that it seems like you hit a ceiling. You know, it's that space where you usually want to move, but you can't move. And so if you're not preparing and you're doing the self-sabotaging, as you mentioned, what form does that take? You know, and so understanding some of the mindset and behaviors that we choose to go to, and understanding that they're coping mechanisms, not only what we go to, but why we go to it. I think that gap is a perfect space for introspection. It's a perfect space for, if you're starting to feel some things that make you want to seek emotional support or a way to cope. Sometimes people will use food. Sometimes people will use sex. Sometimes people will use companionship with people that they know it's not any good, but it's fun and it gets their mind off the fact that I'm in this space where I don't know what the freaking heck I'm supposed to do, if I'm supposed to do anything, and what do I do with these feelings that are arising because of the uncertainty. Do I go inward in a negative way and make it about something that I'm not or something that I don't have? Or do I go inward in a positive way and say, okay, what am I supposed to do that is constructive to fill this space until that next tide comes in for what it is that I'm supposed to do? I think of you have to work the gap and not let the gap work you. Always define your grind and never let the grind define you, you know?
Tell him, T. Tell him.
That's what I'm thinking. So yeah, when I saw this, I said, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." Much to be said about the gap. But then here comes a question that comes to mind, Coach, when we're talking about this gap. Um, do you feel like it's a positive thing for folks to revisit spaces before when they've had gaps in their life and assess what you did during that gap that worked and what you didn't? Do you think that's beneficial?
uh, Absolutely. I always believe that previous experiences have a way of shining light on present experiences, but
Mhm.
more so importantly, present experiences have a way of shining a different light on previous experiences. So when you say going back to some of those gaps that you've had previously, what I think about is like, I can think about being unemployed, the times in my life where I've been unemployed, and what that gap, literal employment gap, looked like.
Yeah.
And then I think about the last time that I was unemployed, how it was a conscious decision to choose to no longer work for the organization that I worked for. And in that experience, looking back at when I was unemployed, which I would say was not planned, um, I was able to look at that and say, even though you were unemployed and it wasn't planned and it was kind of a surprise to you that you were unemployed, you figured it out and it wasn't the end of the road. And so then to get to this space where I'm in a present experience and I'm looking back at that, and it's like, remember how you felt when you thought that that was like the last best paying job that you were ever going to have? And you
Mhm.
thought everything was going to be struggle and despair going forward because you lost. Well, I didn't lose it. It was the economy caused me to lose a good paying job. Well, in looking with the light that when I made the decision, it was like making the decision to go to zero, which was much more, I would say, if I was measuring, it would be much more of a scary event for me to be in, going to zero versus going down to unemployment benefits. There's a difference.
Right.
And to be able to make that decision because of looking back at that previous gap and saying, hey, you've been here unexpectedly before. So how much more will you be able to thrive if you intentionally go into it? And so there was a 30-day period where I didn't have a job and I was going on interviews and looking and trying to figure out what my next role would be. However, I'd never panicked and I never had fear or even the inkling of uncertainty in a very uncertain time, because I knew, just like when we operate in faith, I knew in the faith that I had that everything was going to be okay. And it truly reduced my anxiety from the first time of being unemployed with kids in a house and wondering how you were going to make ends meet. Completely changed that experience for me. What about for you as far as looking back at that past?
I think one of the things that sticks out primarily to me is looking back on, especially when I was younger, and I thought that I was my only source for everything. I had to be able to see it. And not only see it, I had to be able to see a road to it. If I didn't see a way for me to make it probable or possible, then it didn't exist. And so, and what's crazy is thinking back on that time then, um, I always grew up in church and heard about faith and all that kind of stuff, and I actually thought that I had it. But I had it, it was kind of like one of the after effects. Once I saw the path, then it was like, whoo, now I have faith that it's gonna work. But that's because I see how it's gonna work, you know. But when I think back on that then and then fast forward to now, the difference being now is I understand that I'm not the ultimate source. I can see a pathway straight to where I want it to go, and there be another work at play
Right.
that's above me, that's actually going to direct me someplace completely and totally different. So now I think I'm definitely much more malleable than what I used to be. And looking back on that time, I realized that all of that energy was wasted worrying, because it worked out. And some of the times that it worked out when I had my hand in it, it wasn't the best thing for me. I didn't know it until later, until that was moved out of the way. And the better option that I had nothing to do with came
Right.
for me, you know. I want to say to everyone that's watching, if you have any comments or questions or ideas, please, oh please join us on stage live. Yes, we will pull you up here so that you can join in this conversation with us. You just follow the link that's going to be there in the chat for you to be able to join us. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that sticks out most for me. That is understanding that flexibility is so very important, and that I don't care what it is that I think that I see or I believe may be the best option for me. I'm only looking with half of the story. There's so I
Right.
think for all of us, because you know, we're all created for something amazing and something divine and something that just leaves a ripple effect on this earth, if only we have the courage to step out and follow more of what we feel as opposed to what we see. If we accept that as being true, then that means that there's so much that we're going to want to explore and to tap into, that's not necessarily going to lead us to the greatest version of ourselves. And not only that, the greatest experience. Imagine that.
Right.
We think we have it all made up as to what the best experience for ourselves is going to be. But us as just flawed human beings, we don't truly know, or I don't believe that we truly know what makes us intrinsically happy. I don't think we know the answer to that. I think we seek and chase after what we think that thing may be. And we may see something over there and say, hey, I like looking at that. I think that might be for me. So I'm going to try to do that. I'm going to try to get that, you know, only to take some time and go throughout the course of this life. And for those of us who really tap into our faith and allow ourselves to be led instead of us leading, we find out that some of the things that we've had the pleasure of experiencing and growing within are things that we never would have thought of on our own, never could have made happen on our own. And since it happened, this was a pretty good freaking idea and it wasn't mine,
Right.
you know?
But
So
I'll
that's
take it.
I will take it. Right, right. Exactly. Exactly.
You know, you bring up a really good point as far as the intrinsic understanding of happiness, and it's really the human experience for me is always very fascinating to me from the perspective of we live in this first person perspective. So like I can see me on the screen, but I can't see me when I'm looking out, when there's nothing to assist me in seeing myself. And so
Yeah.
we are constantly creatures that are looking outward for feedback. And it's really hard. You can't turn your eyes around. You can close your eyes and try to do some reflective exercises and meditation, but
Yeah.
it's really difficult for us to block out all that external stimuli and really focus on the internal climate. So when you talk about intrinsically not knowing what makes you happy, you truly, I mean, you might think you know what makes you happy, but you don't know what makes you happy until you experience it.
Right.
Because it's they say, you know, and I'm a believer of this. You are responsible for your own happiness. Absolutely, you're responsible for it.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's hard to be responsible for something that you have not put yourself out there to gain an understanding of.
Come on now.
No, this is Tuesday church. We do church on Tuesdays.
This is what that is so true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so for me when I think about like that intrinsic happiness, yeah, I know that I have to operate in a space that allows me to be compassionate with not only myself but other individuals, and that is my passion that fulfills me, that makes me happy. If I don't have that, at some point I'm going to feel depleted no matter what success level I'm achieving in other things.
Yeah.
But it's easy to think money. Oh, well, I'm going to get this money and that money is going to make me happy. It's easy. I was actually having a conversation about money today and my style, my lifestyle, in the sense of how much of my money that I make today that I don't spend. And I was having a conversation with my daughter this weekend about that, in the sense of, you know, I grew up in a neighborhood where there were a lot of families that were in poverty. And so I have the benefit of knowing that in life I don't need a whole lot of monetary, physical, material things. Because when we didn't have water balloons, we used old lunch Ziploc bags to make into water balloons. When I didn't have a tree house, I had a tree, and so I tied ropes to it, and I just climbed up in the tree, and me and the ants shared the tree. I was fortunate. I was unfortunate by society standards, but fortunate in the standard of where I am today to know that I don't need a lot of things. And so in the lack of need for fulfillment of happiness from external factors, as far as monetarily external factors, I've been put in this space where no matter how much I make, I probably don't spend as much as most people who do make it, because of the fact that I know I don't need to spend that much. I live a comfortable lifestyle. I'm happy. I'm content. If there is something extra above and beyond that I want to do, I save for it. Even if I have the money to do it right now, I save for it. And fortunately, my wife, same way. She's like, hey, babe, we need an adventure saving account because I want to save money and I want to be able to go on trips. But I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to charge trips. Like, we could charge it and pay the credit card bill off and get the points, but I don't want to be in debt to somebody for trying to live a life that is fulfilling. Because if you're going into debt to fulfill a lifestyle, at some point that bill is going to come due, and all the happiness that you may have acquired from all the journeys and all the travels is going to reach ahead. And when the bill comes due, it's not going to be happiness. It's going to be stress and frustration. So really quick, let's bring up some things from the chat. It looks like JC's with us. What's going on, JC? It says, when my journey has a gap, first I reflect, then I create the next obstacle to overcome. Absolutely. And then it looks like Courtney Dose. Hey, what's going on, cousin? I completely feel like hold on really quick. I completely feel like I'm my life at this point. I think that's in my life at this point. I'm glad to hear you guys talking about this in regards to filling in the gap. Absolutely. Hey, you better come here every Tuesday and get this Tuesday word. Brother Damien, what's going on, big brother Almighty? Salutations to you in the chat, and then speaking to my soul. So what about for you, Taralyn? One of the things that and JC kind of alluded to this, first she reflects and then creates the next obstacle to overcome. I think that there's a space in between that. What do you think, or what are your thoughts when it comes to being in the gap and finding peace or solace in stillness?
Oh, I love stillness. There's so much to hear and feel in stillness. And I think that when we talked a little bit earlier about that intrinsic happiness, which requires us to be able to connect to that which is in that that's inside and that which is greater. In order for that to happen, you have to have a space cleared out and open that's ready to be filled. You need to be able to hear it. You need to be able to feel it. If there's too much going on, then there's no way for you to do that. When you were talking about money just a second ago, money can be the ultimate soother, the ultimate space to go for comfort. People with a lot of money are they are allowed, if you will, to escape from things inward. They can
Mhm.
just go pay for something, pay for an escape, pay for a thing, you know. And so when you talked about your childhood and being able to connect to the things around you to find peace and happiness, I did some of that as well. I think that's the greatest gift that any of us could have. So stillness, I think, is something that, although challenging, everyone should choose, and they should not only choose it, but they should choose to master it. Because
Mm,
I find that for me, every answer lies in stillness. And
mm,
that's the reason why it comes at a premium. It's so hard to harness and to capture, even once you've practiced it and you're great at commanding stillness, entering into it and making it count. Because I remember when I would go into stillness, it was so much noise going on. I would leave. Maybe I have to try to come back. I'd be like, what in the world is going on? But you know, I think that when you choose to go to that place and you choose to master that space, then that's where you get the answers that lay the foundation for the obstacles, as JC said, that you're going to choose to overcome. There are many obstacles, but not everyone is one that's meant for us to focus on. Some the creator is going to focus on for us, but to distinguish between what's relevant and pertinent to you and what's next in your journey, stillness helps you to get there. I think that's that space in between that
mm,
you were talking about, that's so very important, and it's gratifying. I think that for me, achieving the things that I've been able to achieve, and even some of the things that I'm currently working on, a sense of self is so very important, because we're evolutionary creatures. That's changing day to day, just as we are. That's changing year to year. That's changing decade to decade. And so staying connected to your sense of self and some of the ways in which you've changed. I've been in spaces where I was going in a certain direction and wanted to achieve a certain thing. And then by the time I got there, that thing felt differently. Well, that's because if it took 5 years, I'm a different person 5 years forward than I was 5 years backward. But if you have
right.
that place in stillness, then you're able to assess. And if this is something that you do regularly, you're connected to the ways in which you've changed. How, even though I'm on this journey and it may take some time to get there, when I started, what was important to me has now shifted and changed, because who I am has shifted and changed. What I value has shifted and changed. What I no longer want to be connected to has shifted and changed. Things that I thought that had no relevance when I first started this actually have relevance now, and vice versa. So all of those types of things are what's so important and so gratifying. And I think the perfect space to really connect to your spirituality, when you're able to welcome and master stillness.
Mm. You know, you just struck a chord with me on that, because I think sometimes in our busyness, or in our haste to move, um, we sometimes, I'm not even going to say move, in our haste to define what the next level is,
Yeah.
um, we sometimes will miss we'll miss the mark altogether. I mean, I think about even in us creating this show, Taralyn, Michelle, and Billy Wroe Live, how it was like, we're gonna have conversations.
Mhm.
The end. Like, that is the plan. Let's go.
All right,
but
right.
but but by not by defining, I'm going to say, by not confining through definition what this space was supposed to look like, what it was
Yeah.
supposed to be, um it leaves it open to what it needs to be as it evolves.
Yeah.
Like the past 2 weeks, this has been more of a safe haven space for me, a time
Yeah.
to be able to say, yeah, you have a lot of life going on. There's a lot of things going on around you. You have a lot of plates that you're spinning in your life. However, you have this moment, this 1 hour in the week where you can stop be still and just connect authentically,
Yeah.
transparently. Like, and I wouldn't have been able to define the space for that talking to you about, let's do a show where we're going to stop every week and have an intentional hour where we talk live. I would not be able to make that. I could make it manifest, but I wouldn't be able to plan it out in its every little detail that it would need to be. And
Yeah.
so I think sometimes, again, defining, we miss in the process of defining, we miss the opportunity to allow what we are seeking or what we are experiencing to simply be. I mean, this can go into relationships with, oh, well, they had this red flag. And so because you've already defined and confined what the red flags are, now you're off. And I mean, trust me, I am sure I had some red flags when my wife met me. I am absolutely, without a shadow of doubt, positive of this. However, if she was to flee because of a red flag, rather than, instead of communicating or waiting to see what comes from this,
Explore it.
we wouldn't be married right now. And I would say we have a pretty good marriage, and we are doing pretty good on the building campaign. So those are the things that when you're talking about that, it's just like, man, we get so busy, so caught up with just what we think it should be, and we don't even know because we haven't been there yet. Oh, well, I think it should be this, but you haven't been there yet.
And
take a moment.
In filling the gap, sometimes you just have to go with the flow. So it's so hard to go with the flow because you're like, I don't know where this is going. I'm not dressed for this. I don't know where this is going. Wait a minute. Do I need to bring? No, you arrive. We arrive at gaps for a reason. Gaps are going to elevate or remove, both of which we need. Sometimes we need to purge different things in order to be able to make space for the things that truly matter on our journey. And we sometimes affix value to things that, in the grand scheme of what we're created for and what we're supposed to do, they don't matter. But we don't know that they don't matter. So when we're sitting around, and I could comfortably say this because most people who watch this are people who believe in that which is greater. They're praying people, they're people of faith. So I can say that, we'll pray or we'll ask or we'll believe for those in manifestation and drawing things to you. We'll believe that there's this thing that we want to draw to us, but then sometimes something that we already have will be the blockade between us and what we're supposed to have. And so that gap we have to welcome within that space, or I believe that we should welcome in that space, that you could lose or you could gain, but no matter which one it is, it serves a positive, greater purpose in the end. You just have to go with the flow and see what happens and maintain your mindset, maintain your faith, don't just busy yourself doing nothing. Sometimes busying fills up space that's supposed to be filled with something else. It's not just about continuing to move and having something to do. It's about, if productivity for this space, if you feel within everything like, wait a minute, I feel like I'm supposed to be still, but being still makes me feel uncomfortable. Okay, well then I would discipline myself to be still.
Right.
We spend most of our life moving, and many of us are on hamster wheels going nowhere and mad about it, but can't figure out how to hop off. And then you get a gap where you're still, and then now you're like, wait a minute, what to do? I want to get off the wheel, but what to do? How about nothing?
Right.
Just nothing. Go with the flow and see what happens.
Well, it's like being the kid who's running around. When you're a kid, at least I believe in our households, and you're a kid, you're running around in the house, and your parents say, stop running in the house, and you keep running around in the house. They pop you to correct you. Hey, I said stop running around in the house.
Right.
And that prompts you to be still. But as an adult, we don't have those indicators to say, hey, it's time to be still. We don't have those indicators until life punches you, knocks you flat on your butt, and now you're still. I mean, shoot, your body will shut itself down and put you in a state where, okay, you don't want to take a break, you don't want to rest, you don't want to treat me right, no problem. I'm shutting the whole system down. You can sit in the hospital for 3 weeks until you get your act together, until I can get my act together, and I'll force us to be still. But I would ask you this in the stillness, and it feels like the gap is moving to stillness. But in this stillness of the gap, what do you think it is that we are afraid of that keeps us busy? And I'll ask you in two segments. Do you feel like we are afraid of something because we stopped moving, something kind of catching up with us? Or do you feel like we are more so afraid of not having the noise and the distraction around us to keep us from being focused on certain things that maybe we don't want to address?
Ooh. Well, I think could be both. To the last one that you said, the noise and the distraction and using that to keep from being focused. Absolutely. Some people intentionally do that. I know I did when I was in the lost decade, when I was in my 20s. Would I listen? Because that was a lost.
The lost
Let me just be
you,
clear.
you need to find another thing to call that.
Let me just be clear. The thing is that I didn't burn down too many villages, anything like that. It's just that I compare that mindset. I can remember vividly the way that I used to think when I was in my 20s in comparison to now. You know, and when I'm comparing the two, I'm like, Lord, the lamb, the lamb. But that noise and people using that, if someone uses that's staying busy because it makes it that's the busy seems easier than facing whatever they're running from. There's another side to that. How about people that don't even know that the noise is a distraction? They're used to it.
Got numb.
Actually, yeah, exactly. I mean, think about I'm from a huge family. My mother's the baby of 14. There's 7 of us. And you know, my mother's oldest sister had 11 kids. They just kept with that whole trend, you know. But because of when you're from a big family like that, you're used to the motion, you're used to the noise, you're used to something always going on. So much so that when I moved out by myself for the first time, I used to have to turn on TVs in every room because it was too quiet. So it wasn't that I was running from anything, but that noise and movement and organized chaos was normal to me.
Right.
And so I didn't know how to function outside of that. I had to relearn that, hey, quiet is okay. It doesn't always have to be something going on. So there's that side of it. And then I'm sorry, what was the first part of it that you mentioned?
The first part was running. Is it something we're running away from, or is the second part of just kind of having that, like you just were talking about, that white noise in the background to
Exactly.
keep things on an even keel, really where you were conditioned to be in a noisy environment with all the people running around?
I think that both are parts of all of our lives in some way at some point in time. I mean, if we didn't have avoidance, then how do we mature and gather wisdom? At some
Right.
point, there's something that we're disconnected from, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally. And then at times it does become intentional, especially when you, for those of us who prayed for growth. You ain't know what was coming with that, right? So
Some
you pray,
fertilizer,
right? You pray for that.
aka bull malarkey.
Exactly, that part. You're like, what in the world? And then all of a sudden things start to change around you, you know, and there's all of these changes, and we don't know initially what to do in that space because it's all new. Not only are you adapting to what's going on around you, but you're getting to know this person that's now in the middle of what's going around you, and you have to make a choice. Am I going to react the way that I'm used to because I'm in the habit of doing that? Or am I going to challenge myself to get to know a different aspect of who I am, to adapt to this differently? Because I genuinely do want change. I genuinely do want growth. I genuinely do want wisdom and vision and clarity and passion. And I want all of these things. So then, who am I choosing to be in this space now? And am I open to getting to know him or her? So I answered. Now
Yeah.
for you, because I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking, all right, so we got the different layers with either side, either the quiet versus the noise, and what somebody either chooses to do in that, or may just because of habit doing that. And then there's ushering in, let's just pretend for the sake of conversation. Let's pretend for the sake of conversation that this person is at that space and they've decided, I'm going to accept the invitation and walk through this door to the unknown, him or her, that I want to get to know. I'm going to go through the door. What would you say, just in your experience? Because I believe we all get these invitations, and many of us decline them the first, second, and some of us third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, 10th time. Who knows? What would you what would you say, looking back, Billy now to Billy, I don't know, let's say 10 years ago, what would you say was one of the biggest things that kept you from accepting the invitation the first time you got it to walk through that door and get to meet a new Billy?
I think it was trusting the new Billy. A lot like relationships, where we are hesitant. I guess I'll use it like this. My brother is in the live currently, and so if I seen my brother's car, I seen my brother, and I'm driving down a road, and he pulls out in front of me and accidentally cuts me off. I trust that he didn't do that intentionally to cause hurt, harm, fear, scariness, or anything in my life. He just made a mistake. And I'm very forgiving because I know my brother and I trust my brother. When a stranger does the exact same thing, we are not as forgiving. And when you're walking through these doors of transition, you're walking into an unknown, and that is a stranger. And so, because there's a stranger Billy on the other side of this growth, it's like, do I really trust him to take care of me the way I know me and the way I know I'm taking care of me today? Do I
Mhm.
trust him to do that? That's what I feel like was the biggest thing for me, was that I had to reach a space in my life where I knew, Billy, no matter what you're growing into, on the other side, you're always going to have your best in mind. On the other side, you're always going to want to see you win. You're not going to want to see you lose. You're not going to want to see you fail. You're going to want what's best for you. And if not what's best for you, you're going to want what's better than what you know today. And so that was that significant transition for me from 10 years ago, Billy, to 2022, Billy, was really understanding the fact that I can trust me no matter what level of growth I'm in. I can trust me. Not other people can trust me. I can trust me.
Yeah.
And that is a liberating uh, concept, to be able to understand that in all situations you can trust yourself. Not that you're not going to make mistakes, but that
Mhm.
you're trusting yourself to make the best decisions that you can possibly make with the information that you have. That's what really was a pivotal moment in my life from 10 years ago, when it was just like, yeah, nah, it's Billy Wroe show, and we just gonna stick with Billy Wroe the brand, and we do it my way, or you can hit the highway. To understanding truly that it was a space that I could move and maneuver into, that I could trust the person on the other side, even though I didn't know him, because I know who he is today.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. That makes sense.
Let's catch up this chat really quick, because I feel like I fell behind. I apologize. So I got Facebook user. I know who that is, but I'm not going to put you on blast. Stillness is a must. Absolutely. Casual. I'm just here. I'm just here doing work while watching. Hey, come on through. You can do it however you want to.
That's
Uh,
right.
it looks like transformation is beautiful in your life. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Man, I think about butterflies, caterpillars, and all the things that transform, seeds that transform into flowers. Transformation is a beautiful process if you're willing to go through it. Doesn't mean it's not
Yeah.
a painful one, but it is a beautiful process. Our busyness blocks our blessings, roadblocks. We set them up sometimes on our own. Y'all have fun while having great conversations all the time, whether we on live or on the phone. We always have a laugh at our conversations.
Indeed.
JC says Tuesday is therapy day. Well, then we need to get you up here for therapy day so you can share
Because
some of your nuggets.
that is a deep sister. Run tell that, y'all. Run tell
Mhm. Run and
that.
tell that. Amen. Love it. Flow with it. I'm purging stuff now. Oh, we're gonna come back to the purging. We're gonna come back to the
Yeah.
purging.
Oh, yeah.
Author Damian K. Rowe, when you've made a conscious commitment to continue building, you can't be a testimony of empowerment Yeah, you can't be a testimony of empowerment to others until you have been tested and still get the W. Absolutely. I agree with that. People, oh, I could tell you how to win. I could tell you how to do it. And it's like, wait a minute. You've never been challenged. So you've never had to give up. I've gone through some things, and we've had conversation. I've gone through some things where I really found out what kind of man I was in the situation. Like, okay, so it's easy to say you this kind of man, but once you go through some things, you
Right.
really got to bump up against like, whew, yeah, I'm that kind of man. And even if I'm not, I'm striving to be that kind of man. So you got to make those moves towards it. Heather HP, I'm currently finding my balance. I used to stay so busy I wouldn't leave room for a gap. Then I learned to love and embrace silent reflection. Now I'm working on making sure I get enough of each. Absolutely.
Love it.
And then I catch us up with Facebook user. I need quietness. Too much noise is confusion to me. And Damien says, which allows you the ability to help others build as well to getting the W. Absolutely.
Definitely.
All right. So we are now caught up in the chat. But I would like to pose the same question to you in the sense of when you are in your transitive moments, not just the transitive moment, but the plateau to the into the transitive moments. How do you make that shift? How do you decide that you're going to move from one level to the next? And partially, how do you even understand or comprehend that you are prepared enough on the plateau to move into the next level?
I think the thing that has prepared me is me coming through for me the times that I have before. And the reason why I think that that's important to share, it's funny, I was just talking to a client yesterday about this. He has a new role that he's supposed to go into, something that he thought that he wanted. Now he's learned more about it. It's much more complicated than what he thought. And he was wondering, if this is really what he wanted and if he's prepared, whether or not he's the guy. And so, the more I talked to him about it, it was fascinating to me because I said, well, the level that you're on, they don't even have a conversation with you if you're not the guy. This is not about whether or not you're the guy. It's whether or not you believe you're the guy. Clearly, people who don't know you on an intrinsic level, they feel like you're the guy, or even that you're a prospect. To even be able to be in this pool for folks to fish for you is something. And so that brought to mind the question of, well, tell me about some times that you've come through in the clinch for yourself. And so that conversation rung some things in his mind that he had forgotten about. And I think that for me, that was true. There were so many times that Taralyn came through for Taralyn that I really didn't put any value on. And so I had to take the time to revisit those spaces where it was a pinch. It was thick. I didn't know what was going to be or what was going to happen, but somehow Taralyn came through for Taralyn. And so that preparation, that happening, me revisiting that and understanding that there's value to that, that lets me know that, to your point, whatever it is that's going to come, Taralyn's going to come through for Taralyn. And I think to add to that, I think personally for me, if one of the things that kept me, or no, actually that helped me to walk through the door and accept some of the invitation. No, I think the question was that I asked you, what kept you from doing it? What kept me from doing it at one point in time was because I didn't feel like I deserved it and that I could manage it. Didn't feel like I deserved it and that I can manage it. And so to get to a space where I actually knew that I deserved it and knew that I could manage it was connecting to what I had done and allowing myself to affix value to the things that I am, all of the things within me, all my gifts and talents, and understanding that there was a difference between gifts versus talents. Really
Right.
taking the time to have those conversations with myself is what put me in a space where it's like now, whatever, there's nothing that I won't go for. Some things work and some things don't. That doesn't speak to anything about the soul, the person. Not
Right.
everything that I do is necessarily meant for me, but that doesn't mean that that's about me or something that I lack because it doesn't work out in a way that's favorable for me at that moment on my journey. And so I had to learn not to take things personal with myself. I used to take
Yeah.
a lot of things personally and make it about me when that experience was just that. It was an experience that I was meant to glean something from and to take those things and apply it to something else later. It wasn't to unveil how I lacked. It was actually to unveil how much abundance lived within me. And so
Mm,
taking not taking things personally was huge.
okay. So I want to jump back into the purge conversation, um,
Yeah.
because some of us have a hoarder's mentality when it comes to these gaps,
Yeah.
and we can't help but fill the gap. So my question to you is: have you ever had an experience where you have unintentionally filled a gap, um, and not only unintentionally filled it, but unintentionally filled it incorrectly? Have you ever had an experience like that?
Yeah, man. Filled it. I got filled. Then I wanted to be unfilled, and I was unfulfilled, and it was a lot of feelings in different ways. It wasn't right. Yeah. Relationships, I'll say.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. People are sometimes um the go-to because they're accessible. People are sometimes the go-to for those gaps that we want to fill. We're all about the five senses, right? And so if you don't, what's better than having that somebody, that companion around sometime when you're in those spaces and you just don't know whether to come or go, up or down, what's going on. And so it's, of course, at the time I didn't realize that that was what I was doing. But yeah, that's been a major way. Some of the relationship choices that I've made was because I wanted the comfort, the perception of the safety and security and all of that, of having that person there with me.
Mm.
So of course there have been other ways in which I've done that, but that one came to the forefront of my mind first because it happened to be the biggest experience to learn from. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, I get it. I think in the purge space for myself, I have become more intentional about making sure, I guess it would be like keeping the gap in a minimalist lifestyle, where I'm not bringing too much into the gap. But I've, as well as in relationships with employment, even with just being in, when I used to live in California, being in a space where I felt like it was time for something different, it was time for something new, and sitting in that gap and not really knowing what materials I needed in order to make that gap take, or make that transition take place, or not. I don't want to
mhm,
say make, because that feels like it's forced, to allow that transition to take place. Um, and so when I finally moved out of California to get to a space where now I am at, I mean, I've been in Utah now for 5 years, and then now when I go back to visit California, it just feels very like,
5 years,
yeah, 5 years.
Billy. That does not feel like, dude. Really?
5 years, that fast, 5 years.
What was it? So then it must have been like, was it a couple years before you met your wife?
Yeah, I met
Okay,
her about 5 or 6 months after I moved out here.
okay,
And
because
by the way, I'm always going to put her on blast on this. When you say sometimes things will come up and then go away and come up and go away and come up and go away, we don't really
stop it,
listen.
stop
She
it.
was on the app swiping me away every time it tried to say, hey, this one right here. She was, no. This one right here,
Got it,
no.
got
This one right here, okay, I'm going to give you a chance. And, best swipe of her life. Love you, babe.
Can't stand you.
I always do that because she won't say anything in the chat. If she is watching live, she won't say anything.
Of
So
course she won't, especially now. She's just looking
Mhm.
like, he gonna pay for that.
That's all right. I'll take it. But I have been in a space where we're being out of California. I've had conversations with people since I've been gone, and a lot of them have been like, man, that was the best decision I feel like you've made in your life, because the moment you got out of the environment, the moment you got out of the gap and you started your trajectory up, they're like, you just took off like a rocket. Like, it felt like everything that you wanted to do. You wrote a book, your first row content changed and evolved and became more concise. Like, all these things, credit to my wife for that too, though, because she was like, hey, have you ever thought about doing this? It's always good to have somebody on your team. I'm telling you, it's always good. So as much flack as I give her, she does help me in this space. But it's like all those things that I was laying out, I would say subconsciously, those materials I was laying out subconsciously, as soon as I got out of California, it was like, boom, it just took off. And part of it was because that trust factor, walking through that door of, well, people were like, well, you're moving to Utah. Do you know anybody there? No.
Nope.
I know me, and I know I'll be fine. And so, like, getting into Utah and it truly just being myself and my job, those were the only things I had: myself, my job, and the gym. And those were the three things that I just operated with in the beginning. And knowing that regardless of where I'm at, regardless of what state I live in, regardless of how many people I know in the state,
Yeah.
I'm there with me and I got my back.
Yeah.
So that purging aspect, I fortunately was bold enough and had the courage to be willing to purge a state that I grew up in. Not that I don't go back and visit, but that's a pretty big pill for a lot of people.
Home is home.
You know, right. To be like, hey, yo, I'm leaving home with a knapsack and a stick, and may the odds ever be in my favor. That's a huge leap of faith.
Yeah.
But when you trust yourself, you trust the creator, you trust the process. Look where 5 years later, I wouldn't change that decision. Only thing I'd change is probably making it sooner. But if I made it sooner, I'd probably mess it up. So I think
it was meant for when it happened. It was meant for exactly. You had to be prepared for that moment, and the preparation was happening. You talked about that, being prepared for that. So yeah, it was meant to happen when it did. And I remember when you talk about just your job and the gym. I remember I was going to yoga every Saturday on the phone with you, and you going to the gym. We both going to I'm going to the gym. You going to do what you're doing, and we talk. Yeah. All right, I can hit you when I get out, and that was a routine, you know.
Right.
I remember.
Hot yoga.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. It was religious, man. It was religious. That's one of the things I'm here in Florida. The porch is green. I have hot workouts every day. So
right. You go outside to the mailbox. It's a hot workout.
That's it every day. And you know what? I'm used to it. I love it. But anyway, let's not get off track. Talking about that. But yeah, I think this was such an important conversation because there will always be gaps to fill within our lives. And I think that's something important for all of us to take away from the conversation is being aware, being present, and knowing when the gap will be filled from above or when there's something meant for us to do to fill it. Really creating spaces within us where we allow ourselves to listen and to feel, to really become excited about stillness and what we can learn in it. So don't be intimidated by the fact that if you're not used to going to that space and you haven't mastered it just yet, don't be intimidated by what it could be like where you're going in as a novice. Really and truly be excited about what it's going to be as you grow. Because Billy, what you described, just your growth and the introspection that you've done, that's welcoming stillness and deciding that you're going to conquer it because the best aspect of who we are, that's where we connect to it. It lies on the other side of that. So I think that taking that away from this conversation is something that would be fruitful for all of us. All of us. I mean, the journey never ends and the gaps are never going to end. They're always going to be there. We just choose how we're going to navigate them.
Right. You know, just in that right there, when you say the stillness, I think sometimes we create a synonym between the words stillness and loneliness. They're not the same. They're
Not
they're
at
they're, they're
all.
not the same. Because I had stillness, there were times I had loneliness, but not throughout the duration of the stillness was I lonely.
Mhm.
And so I think that might be another key point that I take from the conversation tonight is that in stillness, it does not mean that you will have to be lonely in that stillness. You might have moments, but you could have busyness and still have moments of loneliness. So,
Absolutely. And if when you're busy and lonely, it's just loud, you're lonely.
right. They just don't let you forget you're lonely. So
That's it.
that is that those are some great points. I think we're all caught up in the chat. So I do want to bring over to the coach's playbook for the tools for tonight. I'll run those for the night.
What?
Um
Okay.
tool number one from the coach's playbook is clear out the space to be filled. That's that purging. That is that finding that finding what that space needs to be filled with, but not just unintentionally filling it. Clear that space out while you're on that plateau so that you, even if you need a running start to get into the next level, you'll at least have at least a little bit of a runway to take off. The tool number two is learn to find comfort in stillness. I would also add that stillness is not loneliness, and, and and learn to be okay that things are still. Learn to be okay that you're not moving. Learn to be okay in not just the stillness, but the silence that the stillness can bring, because that silence gives you an opportunity to have clear thought, clear communication. If you are praying or a person of faith, clear communication with the Creator to really hear what's going on intrinsically within yourself rather than just being focused on the external stimuli that are out there. And then
Yep.
tool number three, as always, there will always be gaps. I don't care if you are on a trajectory for the past 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, going up. At some point, you're going to reach a gap. And even if your gap isn't a plateau, it might be a gap between the two levels that has to be cleared. And you can't just run and hope you jump and make it across, because then you end up falling back down to the bottom. So understand there will always be gaps at some point in your journey. Be very be attentive and aware when those gaps are taking place so that you can take a moment to be still, recenter yourself, reflect, and focus on the tools that you need in that space, and then focus on when it is the organic time to move up and out of that gap or cross that gap if you're crossing it. Other than that, man, I'm so glad we connect on Tuesdays.
I know, right?
You
Who
do not
knew?
know. Well, other than that, if you want the show to be over, it can be over for today. But you can join us every single Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the Taralyn, Michelle, and Billy Wroe live show. But tomorrow, if you want some more stuff this week, you can catch me on the first row on the YouTube page, Facebook, or LinkedIn. You can catch the Wednesday Word, which will be up and running. It's actually already up on all the platforms. If you want to see what the topic is, you can catch me at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then not only is that this week, come on now, you know you got to get over to Taralyn Michelle's The Grind to Find podcast. That will be on this Friday, starting at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as she always says, don't let the grind define you.
Always define your grind and never let it define you. Yep, every Friday. Every
Every
Friday.
Friday. You do not want to miss her shows. Are fire. I don't know what to tell you. You're missing out if you haven't been over to those shows. But go ahead and catch that show. Also, I'll have on social media later this week a show that I did for an iHeartRadio station. I'll put that information up on my social media for the first row. But it's about the book, Fire Your Job, Hire Your Passion. If you have not gotten your copy of Fire Your Job, Hire Your Passion and the companion journal yet, at this point, I don't even know what to tell you. I don't even know what to tell you.
You got to get your life. It's
What
time
I
to
tell
get
you,
your life, people.
look, JC will tell you, we were talking today and I was like, yo, that's the whole first chapter. And she's read the book. Hey, whole first chapter, what we're talking about, bam, knock it out. You got that. All you. Putting you on blast, JC, because I love you. Anyway, head over to firstrow.com where you can get the exclusive combo of the book and the journal. This is not just like a Dear Diary, today I went to the grocery store journal. This actually has exercises in it, spaces, tools, custom or exclusive exercises that are not in the book in this journal. I highly, highly, highly recommend that you get this journal and the book. And then last but not least, what else we got for them? We got, I think that's it. That's all we got. I normally don't close us, so I don't know. You have any closing thoughts you want to add before we get up out of here?
I like the way you close.
All right. All right. We'll take it. Well, thank you for tuning in live with us. Appreciate the interaction in the chat. If you do want to interact with us beyond the show, or if you're watching via the replay, go ahead and drop us a comment. We'll happily respond to you. But thank you guys for tuning in with us and rocking with us on Tuesday. If we don't see you at the Wednesday Word, if we don't see you at the Grind Define, we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Somebody gonna have to get up here next Tuesday. Y'all gotta stop.
Gonna have to.
Yeah,
you know what? It's only the second episode into season 2.
It's they're third. We did a panel though. We did a panel.
Right. I forgot about that. Okay. So they're just warming up a little bit because they did this to us last season too, and then everybody was popping up, and it was
I know. Yeah, then it was popcorn. You're right. So other than that, until the next time, if you like this video, share it. If you share it, like it. We love engaging with you guys in the live audience. And until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless.
Indeed.